Hey there, this is Jenny Chen. I'm the founder of 3D Heals. Welcome to the Lattice podcast, the official podcast for 3D Heals. This is where you will find fun but in-depth conversations with technological game changers, creative minds, entrepreneurs, rule breakers, and more, focusing on how we can use 3D technologies like 3D printing and bioprinting to reinvent healthcare and even life sciences. This podcast will also include AMA or Ask Me Anything sessions, past Instagram live interviews with influencers, and other direct engagements with our tribe. Hello, everyone. We have today, our guest is Juan Pablo Garcia Venegas. I hope I am pronouncing it better than last time. So welcome to this episode. And so Juan, I just want to give you a very brief introduction about who you are. So you just recently graduated as a biomedical engineer, and currently you're working at BMC Medical Manufacturing, which is a medical device manufacturer. So you're an R&D engineer there, but on the side, you were doing quite a bit already, even when you were at school in terms of medical 3D printing. And it seems like in particular, you're very passionate about helping the medical students, how to further their understanding of human anatomy. And since the conversation that we had yesterday, I downloaded one of your files, and it's printing in the background right now.
Nice.
And it's going to take me 7 hours to finish the whole thing. Yes, I may need some help later on to figure out how to remove the support structures and stuff like that. So Juan, I want to start this conversation about from the beginning of your journey, your interest of what you're doing in the medical space. How did you get in touch with 3D printing?
All right. Well, first of all, thanks for your invitation to be here. And now, well, the first time that I encountered a 3D printer was on my third semester of my career. It was 1 week full of challenges for all the students. You can choose whatever activity you would like. At that time, I chose that one called Design and Development of 3D Printed Knee Ortheses, on which we were in order to make the segmentation of the bone, to make the post-processing of this model in Mesh Mixer, and then to use SolidWorks in order to design the ortheses, right? So after that, our professor asked us if we would like to print that model that we used. So we obviously we all accepted, and that was actually my first 3D print. I don't know where it is, that print right now, but well, that was my first encounter with that technology. Well, at that time I was very excited because of the possibilities that 3D printing has for medical students, medical professionals, and well, that I fell in love with the appliances of 3D printing, and then I started to keep informed about those things, and here I am.
Very good. So that's the first 3D printing, period. It's not like you've tried 3D printing doing something else at all.
Not at all. Well, I was not involved in the actual process of the print. I mean, in the printer. We just sent the file to a man in the lab, and he took care about the print. But my first face-to-face contact with 3D printing was I don't know, maybe it was June of 2020 during the confinement. Yeah. I bought my first 3D print.
Yeah. Because of the pandemic.
Yes. At first, it was only for hobby, to print nice stuff for my room and things like that. But then I decided to make the things that I've done in the past. So, well, it's complicated, let me tell you. This model take a long to print. I think that FDM is a good 3D printing process, but for this model, the best 3D printer that I recommend, or I think is the best, is the SLA printers,
Yeah.
the resin printers, or so.
Hmm.
But well, for starters, it's just a nice beginning, right? So well, for sure I will give you some tips for you to make the printing uh,
Yeah.
properly.
Yes. Yeah. That I was gonna ask you. Like, having someone else to print for you is different from where you have to do it yourself, because this morning I have to spend an hour just to make sure the calibration of my machine is actually working out. That's why it got delayed and I didn't start until like an hour ago. So finally fine-tuned everything. It's kind of, it's an enjoyable process as well, because, you're working on your own, you're working with a machine to make it work. On the other hand, sometimes it's frustrating.
Yes.
And then, so on your account, I saw some very small size anatomy. And, sometimes it's maybe for kids, maybe for pediatric. But other times, maybe it's just because we don't have time to print
Yes.
a big
Yes.
one. So, yeah. So, why don't you tell us, why do you think this anatomy? First of all, do you have some demos to show us? It would be great. Maybe you have
Yes.
something.
Yes.
Yeah.
I am. I will show you. Uh, well, starting
Yeah.
by the point that uh, like mm, printing in a regular size or a men's size, it will take a long time. But when my first 3D print was actually a lumbar vertebra, as you can
Oh,
see in this.
nice.
Yes, I think this was the first model that I posted in my page, and actually this was the first photo that you share in your page. So it's important to me.
Yeah.
So at that time, I made the segmentation for the model,
Hmm.
and well, this is like a 1:1 scale print,
Yeah.
but well, getting to another point, I think that the main purpose of having a 3D printed model is to see properties of the bones. Well, in my case, that I have only printed bones, is
Hmm.
that we're able uh, to see how some structures of two different anatomical structures can be related. And this example is from the atlas and the axis. And
Yes.
in the books, we only see the like this plane, no,
Yes.
the transversal plane. So we're only able to see that the the axis actually has this apophysis, and that this apophysis
Hmm.
docks exactly in the atlas,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Well, assume that that here are some ligaments and so,
Yeah.
but using your imagination, you can see that they dock perfectly, and well, these two vertebrae are too important for the uh, sustain of our neck, no,
Yes.
right? So well, I think that having these 3D printed models will help us to see these details in a more proper way.
Yeah.
So for for any students that encounter this anatomical book in black and white, in
Yes.
dot pages, and so, well, it might get complicated, right? So,
Yes.
well, let's not speak of another complex uh, anatomical structure, like I don't know, the the upper segment of the aorta, or so, right? So, well, in another example that I used to print is that uh, to be able to show how the bones in one joint are related. So as we can see, we can see in this model that we have the two bones, well, the three bones actually, the
Yeah.
femur, the tibia, and the patella.
Yeah.
At this time, I joined them only with like Play-Doh, and well, it is important for us to see how the position of both of the three bones are important, right?
Yes.
Well, I also have an example of the shoulder joint, which is composed of three bones: the scapula, the humerus, and the clavicle, right? So, well, I at one time I did the same thing with the Play-Doh, but for photos uh, things I just separate them and I have the three right now. But we can see that the scapula well, humerus is dug in this part of the scapula, and then the clavicle is in this apophysis of this of this of the scapula, right? So, well, I think that it's important to see these models in this way for medical students. Well, let me tell you a fun thing about M3D8. Well, the name is in my imagination is like well, imagine that three is a E, so med and aid to help a student.
Yeah.
A student's physician, yeah, with 3D things, right? Not only with 3D printed models, just to well, some students find useful to have the 3D printed model in their computer, just to, well, actually I don't know if Mac devices are able to see these 3 models, but all the Windows computers are able to well, they have actually an app to visualize those models, right? So well, I think, well, in my experience, I also have the feedback from 2 students that I have made these models, is that, well, the point that I started at the beginning, that they are able to see some details that they were not able to see in a book, right? So, well, I think my project is most focused on people who are getting immersed in those things, and well, why not for the physician to have one of those? Because with well, imagine that you're with a doctor and you are like I don't know, human resources person, and then you went to the physician, your knee hurts, and he needs to say to you that you have a problem in the anterior segment of the organ, and you're like, oh man, what's that, right? So I imagine that if the physician takes this thing from his desk and show you, oh well, this is the segment, and in this part you have a problem, blah 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 blah. You have another structure here, and all right. So I think having this, well, as a start, it's a good idea to make these medical professionals to be aware of this technology and to use it in a good way, right?
Absolutely. I have a joke I want to tell as well. So I have a friend who spent, more than 10 years training like everybody else, and eventually she got into neurosurgery, which is a very respectful career. And during her training, she was carrying a skull with her everywhere she goes, a human skull. That, first of all, is pretty expensive to buy. If you better buy a human skull, that's like, I think it's in the thousands of dollars. But because the anatomy is really important, especially the skull base, which is at the bottom of your skull, where it's between the brain and the rest outside of the brain. it's very, very critical anatomy, and you have to know every single thing. So that's why she was carrying the skull everywhere she goes. But nowadays, I think the medical students and trainees have the benefit of having these 3D printed, maybe smaller anatomy to carry around to learn more. So I really like the idea that your audience is really for the trainees and students who don't have a lot of resources and who really need to learn probably better. So the other thing that's really interesting is the, in the past when I was in medical school, we learned from cadavers, which is basically dead bodies, okay? And those are extremely expensive as well. And 1 year, my school cadaver lab had a criminal charge because one of the lab directors was selling body parts in the black market because other country or cities or whatever need those organs to study, to do whatever they needed to do. So that's how crazy it is. And then later on, this anatomy becomes so expensive. The cadaver is becoming so expensive. A lot of medical schools can no longer afford to have cadavers for students, which in my opinion is one of the best things of going to medical school, is to really look at human anatomy closely and in real flesh, right? And it's gross to many people, but that's how your doctors are trained and should be trained, in my opinion. So now a lot of medical schools no longer have that kind of experience. I think 3D printing and, more affordable simulation tools can really further our education. So I'm absolutely with you on that. So yeah, no, it has a crazy pathway in terms of where we were and where we could be. So I'm seeing hope with, the innovations that you're doing. Now, tell me, Juan, what are some of the challenges you've met throughout this whole process of trying to figure out what's useful, first of all, and two is how to make it useful, or maybe, other things that I don't know about?
Well, as I stated before, I think that SLA printing is better for these purposes, since it not rely on the way that you put the support in an FDM model. I mean, you have the extruder putting the filament,
yes.
but well, if you don't have the support, the filament will lay down, right? So I think that having, I think that is an inconvenience by using FDM 3D printers, but well, they are the cheapest one, right? So but for in terms of having this concept in mind, I think that first of all, the first thing that I made was to get involved, like or to know all the components of my 3D printer, right? To make like this 3D printed to print these 3D printed models that I like the simple ones, the Benchy boat, the calibration cube, and well, the prints that you can find on whichever page you would like to go to, right? To get involved with your printer, to know how things work in a common way, right? Not to know how the stepper moves and things like that. And also, well, my best partner in this in this journey is YouTube. I think there is a great community of people using 3D printing, right? Well, I think that the things that you do are amazing, because we are forging a community of people using 3D printing for healthcare, right? So I think that first of all, you need to get involved with your device. Then it's important to me to have friends that are involved in 3D printing, because in the middle of the night we are like, oh man, this happened to my print. What do I do? So
In the middle of the night, I see.
yes, yes, in the middle
Yes.
of the night with your print that has been going on for like, I don't know, 8 hours at least
Yes.
in a one-to-one scale model. And well, you like sort it out with your friends, and well, just get it done. Uh, but yeah, I think that the most important thing or the thing that will make this to have success is to make a great community, and to help us to see the way that is easier. I don't know if someone that I don't have at this time an SLA printer. It will be nice to me to know if another person who is involved in this process, well, acknowledge that the SLA printers are greater than the FDM printers in terms of printing these models, right?
So you've tried SLA printer by borrowing someone else's printer, perhaps with your models as well?
I think that I share one of my models with one person. I don't know if he actually printed it,
Yeah.
but well, it's an STL file. It's easy to get to a printing file with a software, right?
Yeah.
But for sure, we I propose this to you. I could share some of my files
Yes.
for you to share them to one person, no? And see
Yeah.
what's the difference within these two kinds of 3D printing.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, what you talked about, I can totally understand. I got my printer during pandemic, and I started off trying to print the enclosure, trying to make an enclosure for my printer, and that has like, 24 parts that I have to print. So sometimes I have to print in the middle of the night, and I decided it was a terrible idea because my printer makes so much noise. I couldn't sleep, and there's also a little bit of a smell. So it was
Yes.
pretty bad. And it was like, how could you possibly finish printing all these components? Sometimes it takes 8 to 10 hours. So yeah, but the other thing is you fail a lot.
Oh yes,
Especially if you use, a cheaper printer like mine. I think mine is pretty good. It's Prusa. It's Prusa 3D. It's a very classic, put it together yourself kind of FDM printer, and it's relatively reliable compared to the other printers I had in the past, which is even cheaper. But now I'm upgrading myself to this better one. But you still fail like no others. And then I think it is definitely at least first year or two as a steep learning curve to just figure out how to calibrate and fine tune your machine, and also sometimes learn a little bit design definitely help to optimize. But I don't think I haven't figured out any formal education to see how to optimize my print that already has STL, but I want to optimize it for my own printer, for example. I'm sure maybe there is some difference between SLA versus FDM, probably support structure designs, stuff like that. I haven't really found any reliable platform to learn from. What I'm hoping to do in the future with 3D Heals is so that we can provide source of education and resources for people to learn and figure things out themselves. So absolutely, we're actually thinking, I told you, we've been thinking about creating a depository of 3D printable files for medical purposes or dental purposes, just the open source for everybody for a long time now. And I just haven't gotten my acts together. That's basically what it is. And then we have to figure out a good depository, a space that's safe and secure. And then people, have to do some copyrighted related acknowledgement when they share. And I think that's all you guys want. The designers just want some kind of acknowledgement.
Yes, and well, also an important thing is that this model to be reliable, right? If we are giving these models to a physician, to a med student, or or so, we need to make this model reliable in order to them to be actually to actually help them,
Yeah.
not to affect its performance.
Yeah.
But well, another thing that I think is important is that um, well, I think it's kind of more like a problem of how data management is made, because it's complicated. It's complicated to get a CT scan of a person, and well, and you cannot only just go to the hospital and tell the technician to take a CT scan and send them to you by Google Drive, right? So I think that we mm, well, we could focus on making like, well, there is actually a project. It's a visual. It's a page. It's called the Visual Human Project, on
Mhm.
which you can download CT scans of one male and one female
Yeah.
person. I don't
Yeah.
know if you have heard about it. No.
Perhaps in the past, but maybe you can send me the link and I'm happy to share with everybody.
Yeah. Yes.
Actually, in terms of data, this is a very important point. If you want to start off, find some, CT or MRI data online, I think AWS hosts quite a few depository for research purposes, like the chest, for lung, for other, AI projects and stuff like that. And some of them are actually open source. I have been forever meant to publish some of these resources, so let me dig it out and also share, because those can be excellent testing files to start off. You can segment different parts of the body. Going back to the models that you were showing us, can you hold the spine model just to show everybody again?
Okay.
Hold it
Well,
closer to the camera so that
okay.
you can see.
This is
Yeah.
the Atlas, no,
Yeah.
Axis,
Yeah.
an Atlas model.
Yeah.
We can see that the hypothesis of the axis docks exactly in the Atlas.
Yes.
Right.
So the thing I want to point out is that these are, so if your cervical spine, this is part of your cervical spine, so that's like your neck, basically. And those are C1 and C2, which is basically the part that joins at the bottom of your head and the top of your cervical spine. And a lot of times in trauma patients, those can be injured.
Yes.
Because, that's the junction that hosts this big head on top.
Yeah, yes.
And what's really challenging is, even for, I consider myself an imaging expert because I've been practicing for radiology for quite a few years.
Nice.
I cannot reconstruct that in my head in 3-dimensional. Like, no matter what I do, it's just difficult. And we are able to actually use CT, the 2-dimensional images, to construct into 3D on the screen in the computers. It's still not as good, because there are procedures we also need to do. Put a needle in between C1 and C2, or between other vertebral bodies in the spine, and then you have to put it through a certain angle through a foramen to get into the spine, and that is very difficult when you only have 2-dimensional concept of an anatomy. And so the next thing I'm going to print after the 7-hour print with this clavicle, which I don't really need, is going to be the spine. I think that's going to be the most useful one for me personally as a neuroradiologist. Yeah. The other thing I want to mention is for the simpler anatomy. So sorry, I'm like geeking out about anatomy here. Is the irregularity that you see on the clavicle, and then the leg that you see, there are attachments to the muscles and the tendons. And that's why knowing these services, knowing where the muscle is attaching, and right now you only have bones, so you don't really have the muscle and tendons, but the surface of the bone is not like smooth like a metal rod. It's actually irregular and has a meaning. Yeah. So Juan, where do you want to go from here? Do you have any new projects for yourself?
Well, I think my next project is to buy an SLA printer to see what's the difference between these two printers that I have. I love my two 3D printers that I have. Well, they are the Ender 3 Pro and the Ender 5 Pro. They have worked fine for me. And the Ender 5 Pro is less noisy than the Ender 3 Pro, so I can run like long time prints on the 5 Pro with no problem. And I think that buying an SLA printer will be nice in order to make this project to be more like not to be limited in other things like time or cost or so.
Yeah.
Another thing that I would like to do is to start to give these models to physicians for them to start using them. I mean, the one print is not like expensive,
right?
For speaking on those terms.
Yeah.
And I think it would be nice to see if it's actually helpful for them.
Yeah.
So I would like to try so, and to in other terms also to have more students to be interested in this thing that I've done.
Yeah.
Well, particularly in Mexico because it's easier to me to send them, but for sure I can share these files to any person who needs them, and well also help them to make this model to print properly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I support your activity, and we can definitely share the files. I think the beauty of 3D printing is that people who can't reach you physically, so you can't really give them the model, is that they can do it themselves. So, perhaps if we can give them better instructions on post-processing, support structure design on these models, then they can do it themselves. And then people in Africa or, I don't know, Asia, somewhere else, learning medicine can do it themselves without having to meet you in person. But that said, everybody who's listening, hi, Danny. Everyone who's listening, please reach out to Juan because he's looking for partners and friends, and just talk about 3D printing in general. And also for those companies or people from companies who are selling SLA printers, I think you may consider give a free printer to Juan, so he can make awesome stuff for you.
Yes, for sure. Thanks.
Well, Juan, thank you so much for the time today. This is super fun. We should do this again. I love what you're doing, and I'm going to prepare this video and post-process it into a YouTube video and podcast. And also, I will start creating this depository where you can put yours, and maybe other people wants to do it too on this platform. We haven't decided on what software and platform we're going to use to share, but that should be decided today, I think. Okay,
don't worry.
We are very quick in decision-making process.
yes, but don't worry. I'll be in touch with you, and well, for sure, I will send you whatever you need. Don't worry, at the time you need it.
Well, thank you, Juan. I'll see you another time. Have a good day.
Bye, you too. Thanks.
Okay. Bye-bye. That's it for this episode. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at 3D Heals, and check out the links in the show notes. See you next time.